My name is Dr. Camille Gaines, and this is BIMS Bites. Today, we're going to be taking a bite out of scuba diving. So the ocean is vast, and humans use a variety of different techniques to explore and gain more information about the ocean. We can use sonar, which uses sound vibrations to determine the placement of objects in the ocean. We can use ROVs, or remotely operated vehicles, which allow us to examine characteristics of the deep ocean. We can also use buoys to gain more monitoring information over time to see how the temperature, the salinity, changes in the chemical composition of the water are changing over time. And finally, what we're going to talk about today, we can scuba dive. Scuba diving allows us to experience the ocean with all of our senses. Scuba diving stands for self-contained underwater breathing apparatus, or scuba. And it's been used since the early 20th century. I've used this technique for a lot of my PhD research and my postdoctoral research. Here in this photo, you can see I'm setting up an experiment. I scuba dive to collect samples. I scuba dive to observe what's going on in the ocean. To do this, though, I need some specific equipment, which we're going to go through. First, I need things to protect my body. I wear booties. These booties help to protect my feet from stepping on anything, especially if I'm not diving in a place like this. These rocks can be sharp and hurt your feet. I also dive sometimes with gloves. They help protect me from getting my hands cut or stung. There are organisms in the ocean that can hurt you if you touch them. And in a similar fashion, I wear a wetsuit. My wetsuit keeps me warm as well as protects my body from cuts and stings. And depending on the temperature of the water, depends on what type of wetsuit I will use, being a thin one or a thick one. Wetsuits can vary in their thickness. They usually go between 1 millimeter to 9 millimeters. And here's just the gauge of the type of wetsuits that you may use depending on the temperature of the water. Next, I have my mask, my fins, and my snorkel. My mask helps me, of course, to see underwater. I use my snorkel at times when I'm at the surface to swim with ease. And I use my fins, they help me to swim through the water. Next, and this is probably what most of you are thinking about when you think of scuba, is a tank. Again, for it to be a self-contained underwater breathing apparatus, you have to have some way to actually breathe. Typically, your tank is filled with compressed air, not just oxygen. So that's a mixture of oxygen and nitrogen, which we're breathing in now. Tanks can be made of aluminum or steel. They can also vary in how large they are and how much air they hold. For deeper dives, one can use tanks that have more oxygen than nitrogen in them. This type of diving is known as nitrox, and it involves an advanced certification. Next, we have our tank, but we need a way to get that air from the tank into our bodies. So we use what we call a Scuba Octopus. Sometimes it's called a regulator as well. This connects directly to our tank. At this first stage, you will connect your tank right here where I have the arrow. And this is where your tank and your regulator meet. Next, you have your primary second stage. This you actually put in your mouth, and this is what you breathe from. You have another second stage. This isn't just in case you have a problem, your buddy has a problem, and they need to utilize your air source. Diving is a buddy sport. You never dive by yourself, so you always want to make sure that you are okay and you have stuff just in case your partner needs assistance. Next, you have a submersible pressure gauge, which helps you to monitor how much air is left in your tank. This is very important because you don't want to be diving and then realize you're very low on air. On my regulators to hook up, I also have a dive computer. This logs my dives. It also takes in the water temperature. It tells me how long I've been underwater. And it helps me to dive safely, making sure that I'm not ascending or coming up in the water column too quickly, or it tells me when I need to do a safety stop if if I'm doing a deep dive. So, and finally, we have a low pressure inflator hose, which you can see here at number 5. This hooks up to our BC. So what's the BC? This is a BC. BC, or buoyancy compensator, is a vest-like device that we wear when we dive. This is hooked up to my tank so that I can fill it with air when needed. This helps me to float at the surface and maintain my buoyancy when I'm in the water so that I don't sink too quickly. In my BC, I also have pockets where I can put weights. You might think, why would you need weights? We need the weights to help offset the wetsuit, which is buoyant, as well as our bodies, which are buoyant. These will help us to actually sink in the water. It varies how much weight you need depending on your size, but also the thickness of your wetsuit. For example, when I dive off the coast of California in colder waters in a 9mm wetsuit, I typically use 22 pounds of weight. Versus when I'm in the South Pacific in tropical warm waters using a 3mm wetsuit, I only use 12 pounds. Not all BCs have these pockets, and some people prefer to use a weight belt, which is pictured here, and thread the weights through that weight belt. So regardless of how your gear looks or your preferences, it helps me and it helps us to scuba dive and dive safely. And it's awarded me amazing opportunities to see octopus, stingrays, Nemo and his friends, as well as reef sharks. If you are at all interested in learning how to scuba dive or gaining more information about scuba diving, please visit one of these 3 or all 3 of these organizations: PADI, or the Professional Association for Diver Instructors, the National NAUI, or the National Association for Underwater Instructors, and finally, the National Association for Black Scuba Divers, or NABS. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me at cgainus.com or interact with me on Twitter and Instagram. And again, thanks for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, and follow Black and Marine Science on all of our social media outlets. Thank you.